What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Go Lead Everything. I'm Phil Swanson, back with you, and I got a special guest today, a gentleman that I bumped into on LinkedIn, just commenting on a post, and I was so intrigued by what he was talking about and some of his points about psychometrics and behavioral science. I'm just really interested to talk to this individual. He's over in England, in where are you at, David?
I'm going to leave that to you. I want to hear you say it.
Uttoxeter? Uttoxeter. Uttoxeter?
That's it, yeah.
All right. Uttoxeter. And he's the founder and director of Able and Rush People Solutions Limited. And really varied background, experience-based manager and trainer. He's got a history in law enforcement and skilled in crew resource management, flight safety, helicopters, aviation. He's got a certificate in business management, graduate certificate from Staffordshire University, and worked also with the Jamaica Constabulary Force and Jamaica Defense Force to develop their helicopter operation and working practices. So really cool history, cool background, varied experience. Really deep insights to share, at least in our first interaction. He's had some so far, so I'm really excited to share. David Howell with the GLE Network. David, welcome to GLE.
Cheers, Phil. That's fantastic. Yes, I didn't realize I was that exotic, as it were, really, after reading all that out. But yeah, it was a very varied career, very lucky, very fortunate.
Well, I was telling you before the show, you remind me of Mr. Darby from Suits, and I was thinking you might be a badass British rugby player. Hopefully, Darby ended up being a murderer, I think. So I don't think you're doing anything like that. But
I've got that box left to tick.
Right. Let's not check it, I think.
No.
So David, why don't we open up? Tell me and the audience a little bit about your story and how you came to found Able and Rush and People Solutions and what you're doing now.
Right. It's quite a long story. Left school. We'll start there. I was a quantity surveyor of all things, which is a role in the construction industry. And that didn't last too long. It's one of those jobs you hear that don't look out the window in the morning because you've got nothing to do in the afternoon. But it just didn't grab my kind of passion and what I wanted to do. And strangely enough, I worked in a building called Peel House in Burton-on-Trent, which is not far from here. So Robert Peel started the police force back in a few hundred years ago now. But it was owned by his uncle or one of his relatives. And I was looking out the window and I saw two police officers walking past. I thought, wow, that's cool. And I'm going to do that. I want to do that. They were just walking down the street, talking to people, interacting and thinking, wow, you just don't know what you're going to do from 1 minute to the next. Mm-hmm. There was that interaction with the public. And it sounds a bit corny, but kind of making a difference. Mm-hmm. They were making a difference. I mean, that was back in 1989. So I decided to join the police force. I actually wanted to fly before that. I wanted to join the Navy, but through a minor health issue, I wasn't able to join. So much to my mother's kind of, she didn't want me to join the police, shall we say. Mm-hmm. Being a bit of a mother's boy and protective. So I suppose a lot of mothers kind of look to that and see their kind of, because I was a twin as well. So
oh wow,
yeah. So
fraternal or identical?
Identical. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So she didn't want me to join really, but I did anyway. Fantastic career, and I always remained operational. So I did the traffic, kind of the fast cars, advanced driving, firearms. I didn't tell my grandmother about that because that would have upset her. So I kept that to myself. Yeah. That was back in 94 and got a lucky break. And it's amazing. Sometimes you take a step back and think, how on earth did I get here? What happened? Right. That serendipity, that luck to get you here. And one Sunday afternoon, I had a pursuit in one of the towns in Staffordshire with a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. And we ended up catching it eventually. And boxing it between cars. It's quite amusing, really. So the motorcycle was boxed between cars, and he was just sat there between the two police vehicles and had nowhere to go. So little did I know, but the helicopter, the force helicopter, was over above and monitoring and videoing. So he said, "What should we do? Let's go and nice Sunday afternoon. Let's go and have a trundle down to the air unit and pick the video up that they prepared for us." And it went from there. So they invited me to go on a night shift to experience flying in a helicopter.
Wow!
I just thought, wow, this is just amazing, and this is where I want to be, because the people on the unit were fantastic as well. They were that passionate, that enthusiastic about what they did. So I thought, I just want part of this. I want to experience more of it. So I was lucky to get a job on there. 2005, I became quite a grand title of the Deputy Unit Executive Officer. That was the title he had as a sergeant. So I looked after the training, recruitment, and that's when I got involved in crew resource management, because that's an aviation subject. So most aviation accidents, I don't want to put you off flying, but most of them, or 80% and above, are human initiated. There's a human element to it. So by looking at the human factors and the human element, getting people, certainly in a police environment within an aircraft, to work closely together, you get the maximum out of the aircraft. So a lot of the time, I've always said that you can have the best aircraft in the world, the best cameras on board, the best technology. If you haven't got the people working together, you just lose that ability. I mean, it's a bit military kind of terminology, but fight with the aircraft to get the best out of it, to find people that are missing, that need to be found, finding criminals who don't want to be found, and using it to its kind of maximum capacity. So I was lucky. Managed the base in the Midlands, a place called Halfpenny Green. It was very quaint, near a place called Bridgnorth. That got closed down, unfortunately. And then somebody said, "Well, why don't you come down to London and work down here?" A friend down at a base at Lipids Hill. And you think, "Oh, that's miles away. It's kind of 150 miles. How am I going to do that?" We worked it out, and I went and worked down there for 3 years, and that was a totally different experience.
Wow.
Had the honour, actually, of leading President Obama across London when he visited the UK.
Wow.
Yeah. So crazy. Now here's a story that they wouldn't allow the American aircraft and Marine One to just kind of fly across London on their own. They wanted a British police aircraft for them to follow, otherwise they got lost. So they had to follow us. So that was a real honour, to be honest, to be part of that, and to see the kind of the entourage that goes with it, and the security and the support and the preparation was just fascinating, just to be part of it.
Yeah, I imagine so. I imagine so.
But on the flip side, things like Grenfell Tower you've probably heard of, and some of the terrorist incidents that took place, that was a totally different experience for me, coming from what we call a county force, a more rural force, to one of the big metropolitan forces, and obviously the capital. Yeah,
probably one of the biggest in the world.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the complexity, obviously, of running a police force like that, and all the different kind of specialist areas that are involved, was a huge eye-opener, and an honour to do it, really. So I learned a huge lot about myself as well as in the process. Yeah.
Huge. That's crazy experience, David. I'm curious, you made a comment about technology in the aircrafts and people being kind of a key factor. Is that something you see a lot today as organizations are working to implement new technology? And I know there's lots of conversations around the world around how technology is going to replace jobs and things like that. Where do you see technology sort of heading? And, is it going to continue to be the case, do you think, where people will continue to be sort of this necessary magic piece, or do you think humans will eventually completely be replaced?
That's a huge question, and one we're trying to, with colleagues, is trying to work that one out. Even in AI, it's dependent on the people who are programming it, people who are making it, developing it, because it will always have, and we look at a thing like Conway's Law, it'll always have from the top down of any organization, shall I say, that there's that influence from the top that goes from the top down, and is actually transferred all the way down to the people on the front line. So in terms of technology, I think we have to be careful that we don't outpace ourselves, and that the solutions that we are providing are actually in line with the problem and the solution that we're trying to find. Interestingly, I did a contract after I retired in 2019 as a business change manager of a kind of record management system, quite a high value one within a local police service. And the problems it caused almost, or if they actually did, outweighed the solutions that they were trying to solve.
Wow.
And so many factors. And I was the person who wrote what was called the post-implementation review. So to look back over the project and see where the pitfalls were and look at if lessons could be learned in the future. And I was horrified really by the amount of luck that was involved just to switch the thing on, not alone be successful and actually improve policing and improve the life of the people on the front line. We do the digital quite well. We forget a lot of the time the transformation, which is the human element, which is what kind of reflecting back on aviation and people and crew resource management was the bit I was fascinated in. Yeah. So change management is a huge thing, really, and we don't always get it right. I mean, I don't know the full facts, but you look at the number of IT projects that simply fail because we forget the human element. Sure. I don't know if that's an answer to your question. But
yeah, it's a fascinating topic and really good insights. I don't know if you know a guy named Jordan Peterson, Canadian psychologist, kind of blown up over the last several years. Spoken in England a couple times, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting insights. Varied opinions on Jordan. I like a lot of his kind of the way he thinks through some things. And one of the things I heard him say recently was kind of right along the lines of what you said. We think we're providing a solution to a problem, but we have such a narrow understanding of the problem that we don't see that by now adding this solution in, you potentially are causing way bigger problems down the road than you had any visibility into from the start. And it's almost like from a change management perspective, this hesitation to we need to be very careful as we implement changes because we don't necessarily understand these complex systems going around us and how they even function.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is, we can kind of touch on the psychometrics here, is that what are the people that are receiving the change or having to deal with it? And it's normally the people on the front line that have to deal with it, the consequences. What are they actually, and where are they before the change takes place? What are they feeling and what they're experiencing? And we're doing this in terms of psychometrics, not from a verbal perspective, not how are you? Yes, I'm fine, thank you. How's it going? Yes, it's okay. How are you today? Yes, I'm busy. Which is kind of almost like a fob off response to a lot of these questions, because we don't get to the subconscious, we don't get to the root cause of the problem or an answer that we can work from. Yeah.
You don't get a real answer. How are you today? Oh, I'm fine. Well, that's not really how I am.
No.
How am I really?
Yeah. And if you're a supervisor and somebody says that to you, you can always kind of, again, you've got that warm, fuzzy feeling because I've actually asked them and they said they're fine. So that's as far as it goes. There's not that time and effort. The supervisors themselves might be in a poor place anyway. So just to have somebody say they're fine, actually, and not coming back probably with no, I'm not actually, and there's a lot going on I need to talk to, is a relief they've got the fine response back to some extent. So going back to that, we just need to find out what's really going on to get to the root cause, that inner response that they can't actually lie to themselves. And that's the beauty of the psychometrics we're using at the moment.
David, I want to dive into psychometrics. Before we do, if y'all aren't following David, he's on LinkedIn. interacting, huge, great ads and content that he's putting out there on LinkedIn. Go check him out, David Howell. You can find him at ableandrush.com. That's ableandrush.com is his website. And yeah, go follow him on LinkedIn. He's got a book coming out here in the summer. I don't know if there's any details we can share on that yet, David, or just be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, there's a working title of, and this will probably fits into this as well, which is Speak Up, Listen Down, which is quite a kind of contentious title for it.
Interesting. What makes it contentious?
We don't do enough of it. And that's what I found out when I unfortunately got into a bullying situation. I wasn't the bully. I got bullied in the police service, of all places.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So let's go there. I know you've got a lot of experience with bullying. It probably led kind of to the psychometric sort of pursuits, did it not?
It did. Yes, absolutely. What again, it's amazing how those dots get joined up sometimes.
Yeah.
And looking back, it might sound a strange thing, but being bullied, although it was really unpleasant and dark at the time, has led me to really where I am and talking to you. It sounds daft, but the results of it are fantastic.
What do you mean by bullying? I actually
want to make a difference.
I had a guy on my show one time, and I think I named his episode "Be Thankful for the Bullies," because he had a bullying experience that kind of set him down a path to where he is today, and he almost has like this weird gratitude for the fact that he was bullied. And I heard that in your voice a little bit, David, that, almost like it's funny. It was horrible and dark and terrible. Can you share a little bit about your experience? I don't know if you're comfortable doing that. Yeah,
please don't get me wrong. Some people don't get that, and they're not that fortunate, and they're still living experiences, be it PTSD or even depression and some really wicked, even down to suicide due to some of the bullying that's going on. So I'm not taking that in a light way.
Yeah, definitely.
But it came about by something sounding quite trivial, really, that there was 15 base managers in the country for the National Police Air Service, and they wanted to change the shift pattern. A senior officer did anyway. And I kind of took a step back and thought, wow, this is going to cause so much havoc, really, potentially. And I did the figures. You're going to lose half of your staff because they can't work the new shift pattern. You're going to lose a lot of experience, which is a risk in itself within aviation, because it takes easily probably 18 months, 2 years for somebody not just to get trained, but actually get the experience to manage aviation within the police service.
Right.
So I put this all down and said, I've got a different idea, different solution. And I got my head kind of shot off, really, by the senior officer. So me thinking, wow, I've got a solution here that can solve a lot of problems, save money, give a better service, retain your staff, stopping them kind of going out the door. And I got the total opposite. And that put me into shell, really. And this, what happens a lot of the time is if you get that kind of pushback, I certainly did, was right, okay, I can't take it any further. I'm just going to turn up to work. I've offered my experience, I've offered my advice to try and solve it. So I'm just going to turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning and go home that's very kind of general, go home at 6. And that's it. I'm just going to sit there and do what I need to, because I've got only 2 years left to do before I retire. So I'll just sit it out.
Yeah.
You get into like a cruising mode then, and you actually think, well, I reflected on it. You don't actually hurt the organization. Sorry, you don't hurt the person who's bullying you. You hurt yourself. And you also hurt the organization, because you've always been passionate about it. The people around you have been fantastic. So in a way, you're not getting back at the person who you see as this figure of hate and how dare they kind of treat me like that. But you kind of end up kind of demonizing yourself, really. But after I left the police service, this is when I got involved in the psychometrics. Some junior showman who's South African just invited me. Again, it was a LinkedIn connection. Why don't you come and just do my psychometrics and have a look, see what you think. And little bit reticent and standoffish, I suppose, to start with. I'd done psychometrics. I don't know if you've done psychometrics in the past, Phil. Anything?
I don't have a ton of how would you define psychometrics? What do you mean by doing psychometrics?
Say doing a questionnaire and it'll tell you if you're blue, green, or
like a personality sort of test.
Yeah.
I've done several. Actually, I did Jordan Peterson's recently.
Oh, okay.
He's got one. It's based off the Big Five. You're probably familiar with that, the Big Five traits. But I find that stuff very helpful and useful to really help you see tendencies and maybe uncover past programming that maybe you didn't know you necessarily had. More as like an internal tool to help how you interact and where you might need to focus, as opposed to maybe pointing to those areas where all the other people need to focus.
Yeah. Well, I've done some of those, but I'm going to shoot those out the water now, because it was totally different. Totally different. This wasn't 15, 20 questions. This was 2 hours of different tests.
Wow.
Looking at cognitive ability to focus, concentrate, vision as well. Then preferences, and also looking at the Big Five as well, but also looking at mental health and if somebody's in burnout as well. So the whole remit, and the idea is to put that together, because we're not just one single focused element.
Yeah.
And personality, certainly in personality tests, you can actually cheat those if you wanted to. Certainly in a workplace scenario.
Sure. You can.
Yeah.
Lie, basically.
Yeah. So, and you can actually get them off the net and trial them before you do them. So you can work your way around. But there was nowhere to hide with this. And the debrief was critical as well. And as I said before, you can't lie to yourself, because one, you don't know what they're looking for. And the way it's put together and debriefed was fascinating. And it came out that, yes, I was more on the creative side. I didn't like injustice. And also that I was more of a non-linear thinker, so a bigger picture thinker rather than a linear thinker. And you put context around it, and that's the big thing. So reflecting on the bullying, I could see, and in a bullying situation, a lot of people say, "Oh, you're doing the right thing. It's the other person that's out of order here. You carry on. You're doing the right thing." But actually, looking back now, part of the problem and part of the risk was me from the psychometrics, and it told me what risks I posed to myself. And sometimes those risks you see as being an advantage or a strength, when actually they can actually be your Achilles heel. Right. So being creative and looking for solutions. I've got a solution to the problem, to the shift patterns. I want to tell everybody about it. I can save money, I can save jobs, I can save kind of experience here. Actually, if I thought more about it, let's think, okay, I've got a solution, but if I tell this person at this level and they're non-linear or linear, shall we say, I'm going to get a real kickback here and end up kind of in a dark place I don't want to be. How do I then communicate with that person? How do I know what's going on in their world as well? What pressures have they got on them, be it at home, be it from above? What pressures are they being piled onto their shoulders to save money, shall we say, which might have been an issue? Yeah. Are they over-promoted, which is a lot of problems we see at the moment, with something like 80% of leaders being poorly selected. So are they in what we call that Dunning-Kruger, that overconfidence in their own abilities? The Peter Principle in terms of over-promotion. So it helped me to understand where they were as well as I was.
Yeah.
So that's how really I was able to forgive, heal myself, and protect myself for the future, and importantly, move on. So, and that's why I kind of find myself in this space now, and looking at anti-bullying, and certainly in the workplace as well.
It's fascinating, David. I pulled up my recent results when I took the Big Five, and it's almost funny. Like, I feel like we're so quick to point externally on, this person did this to me, and I think I just posted on this the other day, kind of the teenager mentality versus actually becoming an adult. And I don't think we fully grow up into adulthood. And I feel like I'm just starting to as a young man, but I don't think we fully grow up into adulthood until we take full responsibility for our situations and see how we control our situations. Now we might not like the way we're treated by other people, but like one example I'll give, I'm very high in agreeableness. Yeah. And that they divide that into compassion and politeness, and I'm high in both of those. And one of the biggest problems with people that are high in agreeableness is they tend to get walked over because they don't know how to stand up for themselves. Yeah. In an appropriate way. And I've as I like gauge through my whole past history, I can think of so many examples where I've let that happen, and then they harbor resentment, and they end up being passive aggressive at times. It comes out in the wrong way and in inappropriate ways, and I'm curious, like thinking back to your experience on the force and that time, knowing what you know now, what would you, or if anything, have done differently, maybe in your response to the way this individual treated you?
The big thing for me is, so many things come full circle to self-awareness, and I wish I'd known that. That's the key, and known my own risks. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you've touched on personality there, but personality is a fluid thing. Mm-hmm. It can change at the kind of the toss of a coin, really. Yeah. It's dependent on the environment you're in. If mm-hmm. you've got people around you that are supportive, and you're in a role, and this is a key to the psychometrics as well, because we look at complexity. And if somebody's in or has the innate talent complexity to deal with the complexity of the role, there's a happy balance there. And if they've got the environment around them as well, and the people and support, and a big thing at the moment, it's a bit of a buzzword, isn't it? Psychological safety there. Mm-hmm. Then everything is on a nice even keel. Mm-hmm. And those are the places where you want to be, because then you'll start being engaged and start wanting to push the creativity and work with others and understand others and appreciate them. And you get that satisfaction of being thanked as well for jobs well done. So it's that atmosphere, that environment. So if I look back, I would say the key to a huge amount of things is that self-awareness, knowing who you are, mm-hmm. but not through purely personality kind of questionnaire. Right. It needs to be deeper. It needs to be the holistic look at yourself, mm-hmm. because it might be your eyesight that's causing you problems and frustration. It might be because you are a more non-linear thinker that you struggle to communicate with people around you. Mm-hmm. And we do have polymaths out there that are just kind of phenomenal thinkers, but how they communicate and build relationships is a struggle. Right. And we can kind of touch on education there, go back to education, is that education's built on meritocracy, really. And if you kind of fall out of that, then either you're disruptive because you're under challenged, mm-hmm. or seen as a troublemaker. But how much potential, how much waste is out there because they don't fit into that narrow band to be able to regurgitate the information passed to them to pass an exam. Oh, so much. And the ones that have a good, let's call it identity, a good self-confidence in their abilities, whether they, had good parents that instilled that in them or whatnot, they end up going on to be successful in spite of all the world telling them that they have these mm-hmm. problems. And then, others that maybe don't have that sort of thing and don't have that strong identity foundation, they maybe mm-hmm. go different ways. I see that all. I love, David, what you said about how your personality will change based on your environment, your surroundings. I feel like this is something that I didn't take as seriously. I mean, everyone always says you're going to become who you hang around, and the big buzzword I hear everywhere now is you're the product of the 5 people closest to you. But, truly, if your personality
if the way you respond, the way you act can literally change based on your environment, then your environment and choosing who you're putting around you, being purposeful with your association and the association of your family is so important. I mean, it's so important. And I just feel like it's underplayed. I love how you focused on that because I think that's so right on.
Yeah, we've done assessments on people that we find are in a cruising mode. And the classic is somebody coming up to retirement. Mm-hmm. So they're very kind of perfectionist in leaving a legacy that they don't want that undermined. Mm-hmm. They kind of close that off from people that they see as rivals and want their position. And again, it doesn't do them any good. So their behavior will mirror and reflect what they're going through. So they'll probably seem standoffish, quite abrupt potentially,
sure,
not want to get involved, perhaps unsociable. But actually what they're doing, they're kind of bringing themselves in. So that personality to somebody looking outside in is, well, that's kind of antisocial. That's not very helpful. I'm not going to learn anything from them. But actually from the inside out, they're actually being so protectionist to their position, mm-hmm. that's what the personality is reflected in their behavior. Yeah. So it's understanding the root causes, because we've seen that in the past, and you can turn that around quite easily with self-awareness, mm-hmm. that actually to become engaged, how about you passing on some of your vast amounts of history and experience to the younger ones? Mm-hmm. So then you become more engaged with the people around you. They become engaged with you because they want to know about, before you leave and retire, what you've got to offer and what you've experienced. So there's again, we lose out on that potential and that experience. And so there's every person has a story to tell. Mm-hmm. And we don't always read it properly, purely from behaviors. Well, we certainly don't. It's deeper than that.
So, David, what are we missing as leaders in today's culture? We talk about toxic culture and safe work environments, feeling psychological safety, being able to speak up. I love the title of your book, Speak Up, Listen Down. I can't wait to get my hands on that when it comes out. What are we missing today, and what can we be doing better as leaders to create good cultures in our families and our organizations, wherever we're at?
The first thing is don't chase culture. That sounds a bit counterintuitive, but there's a lot made of, and certainly in the UK and certainly in policing in the UK, is we need to change the culture. We need to change how people behave. We need to change or make people compassionate and kind and have empathy. We need to first understand what's going on the front line. And I go back to that point. What are they experiencing and what are they feeling at this moment in time? Mm-hmm. And then going back to what we said earlier is change the experience around them and build from that perspective. And part of that title of that book is we need to listen to the people at the front line. Mm-hmm. There's some fantastic business kind of concepts. You might have heard of Red and Hai and the Hai company in China, where there's small autonomous groups, and they look at groups of 12 to 15, which is about the maximum, really. But they're self-managing. And that's the key, because they are the closest people to the customer. And if you think in policing, the constables, the PCSOs we have over here, and the people working on the front line, they have the closest connection to the public. Mm-hmm. They know what the problems are. They know what the solutions are as well. Mm-hmm. But if we look at that iceberg of what information gets passed from the bottom to the top, only something like 4% of that information is filtered, for whatever reasons, from the different layers, gets to the top. So how can they make learned, constructive decisions on what's going to happen on the front line in policing when they're not in full kind of comprehension of the facts? Yeah. And we need to get that flatter organisations to actually deliver what the public want. But the people at the front line know what needs delivering. So what we do is provide guardrails. Yes, it's got to be legal. Yes, it's got to be moral. And if you step out of there are consequences. And we start looking at some of the problems in misogyny and things like that, and racism and things like that. But there's your guardrails. Go out there and we will support you to do the job. Because what happens then, you get success. Yeah. And success breeds success. Actually, that worked. That worked. And I'm not going back to the same family kind of 5 times a month. I've done the fantastic job. We've sent the right person to do it. We've gone once because we've got the right result. And the family or the public who are then connecting and have that relationship with the police, that's a ripple effect. Because, wow, I had a police officer come around yesterday, we had a real problem, myself and whoever, and they solved it. They spent the time, they listened, they worked out the best course of action, and they were great. And I can only recommend them. And this is how the byproduct of all that is culture. Because the behaviours exhibited and the success felt is translated to how they talk to people, interact with people, have relations, break down conflicts as well. And that's reflected up the ladder.
David, I love it. I follow Brad Lee's podcast called Dropping Bombs. He's got this little bomb sound effect, and he drops bombs whenever somebody drops a bomb. But for anybody listening, boom. Great bomb by David. Don't chase culture. This is something I absolutely love, this mentality, David. Like, I feel like it's so interesting when people can feel problems with culture. And then what happens is leadership feels it, tries to make an adjustment to correct it, and their adjustment comes out in words from the top.
Yes.
And the culture's going, like you said, you got to change their experience. Nothing in their experience, nothing that you were doing to incentivize behaviors one way or the other, or encourage successful behaviors, or applaud people doing the right thing. None of that has changed, but they're hearing different words, and all that creates is this inauthentic sort of feeling of hypocrisy that just it almost does further damage to the culture, I think.
Yeah, like you get into like a vicious circle, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your catch-22 scenario.
Again, on LinkedIn recently, we've been reading so much on culture, and it's almost if when the culture we need to change the culture, they don't know what the problem is. And they're using culture as a kind of overriding kind of umbrella to say, we don't really know what's going on here, but we'll call it the culture. We'll call it the culture problem. And I don't know if you have read some of Daniel Amen's stuff and on TEDx.
I may have. I don't recognize the name, but I've seen a lot of TED Talks and TEDx stuff.
Psychiatrist, actually, and neurology, works in neurology. I'll double check that, though. But I pinched 2 of his quotes and sayings. And one is, how do you know if you don't look? And that's not what we're doing. And the other one, which is kind of covers culture at the moment, is we throw darts in the dark. And until we know what's happening at the ground level, shall we say, and what the root cause is, all we're doing is throwing darts in the dark. We need to turn the lights on and then start throwing the darts, because we'll actually get the target a lot quicker.
I love that. Don't throw darts in the dark. Turn the lights on.
Yes,
absolutely love that.
Have a look at Daniel's TEDx. 15 minutes.
I love that. And your comment too about communication, only like at 4%, I think you said, of communication actually gets up the chain. I use a metaphor. I call it like the Bermuda Triangle of leadership, where stuff goes in and it never comes out, and no one knows what happens to it. But it's really it's like the worst game of telephone. If you're familiar with the old telephone game and passing the phrase around,
yes,
it's and for all you conspiracy theorists out there, it's no accident that the space shuttles are launched from Florida over the Bermuda Triangle. I'll just throw that out there.
Right.
But,
okay.
You can look into that yourself. But
yes.
I don't want to go down a weird rabbit hole. But I'm telling you, there's something to that. So much of how communication travels and people, leaders, it's so challenging to get good information from people at the ground floor. I've heard schools of thought, David. I'm curious your opinion on this. I can't remember how it was described in this book, and I can't remember the title of the book, but it talked about leaders having sort of their own like secret team at every level in the organization, where they actually sort of befriend certain individuals to almost, I hate to use the word spy because it may seem like a negative connotation. I don't mean it that way, but they almost have people at different levels in the organization that feed them information of what's really going on. Have you ever heard of that sort of strategy, and what would you say about something like that?
Certainly not directly. I think what you get, I mean, it's complicated, isn't it? You get people that are over promoted, that suffer in their role. And
why do you think that's happening? Do you think that's a pretty systemic problem these days?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because I think we select on the wrong reasons. Personality being one, performance, and I think the suffer in the police service is that you get to this mini me kind of situation that to get to the next level, I need to behave like that. I need to look like that. I need to talk like that. I need to agree with that person as well. So we lose that creativity. And if there's no psychological safety,
right,
don't explore different avenues and different thinking.
It becomes like a yes man culture where everybody's just doing what they're told. Yeah.
Absolutely. Or fighting for the next level. And we end up kind of working in these silos rather than a synergy and collaborative, sorry, should I say, kind of environment, which is healthy for everybody, to be honest. Because again, if you feel that success together and celebrate as a team and celebrate together, you want to do it more. So, and there's any number of reasons why that information is filtered through. I don't want to tell the next level up of something that's gone wrong, so I'll kind of call it sex it up, or kind of skirt around the real truth about what's going on. Or actually, when we start looking at mental health as well, and if somebody's out of kilter and in terms of the balance with that complexity and role, they're not happy to actually pass that information on.
So how do we change that, David? Is it being caused because of the response of the leaders being told that information? I mean, if someone comes to me with bad information and I respond, there's going to be negative consequences about that bad information instantly, then I'm almost de-incentivizing my people to share with me what's going on, right? Yeah. So can I change something I'm doing to change that?
I'll come around again to self-awareness. It's hard because you need that self-awareness and psychological safety top to bottom. And
right. So it's the catch-22 again.
And some flatter organizations. But also we use a psychometrics called a Q23, which is a stripped down version of the full quantum assessment. And it's looking at how people feel and experience in their role. Are they loving their role? Are they in burnout as well? And we can feed that into a kind of a group dynamics to see where the hotspots are. Who's not actually happy with their role, happy with the task, happy with leadership. And it has to be non-judgmental as well. And that's a key thing, which probably haven't touched on yet, is that if you start pointing fingers and getting personal, and right, it's your fault, this is all going wrong, we lose that opportunity to put something right. If we reframe things and say, right, things aren't going so well, are you enjoying the position? Or that's probably not a good question, but let's work this out together to make the experience better for everybody. How can we do that? Rather than pointing fingers, because in a group, if we start doing that, we've lost it.
Right.
And if you probably notice that on LinkedIn, as soon as somebody gets personal with somebody else, the argument's gone out, and you might as well it's a waste of time. And that happens in politics, to be honest, and government and things like that.
100%.
Once you start pointing fingers and getting personal, that any good intentions on argument and trying to make things better is lost. It's out the window.
Yeah. That's I mean, that's old school Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people stuff right there. You don't criticize, right? Nobody wants to be criticized.
Yeah. And you need to improve, and you have to challenge, but you have to challenge in the right way. Mm-hmm. I heard a great analogy about, I'm trying to think his name now, on psychological safety. Mm-hmm. And there's a fine line, isn't there, between bullying and kind of challenging poor performance. I mean, you have to be kind of mindful of that. But it's like going to the gym. And if you've got a good gym instructor, they will push you and know how far to push you to get the best out of you. And yes, it might ache, or you might get the odd twinge at the end of it, but you know that you can come back the next day and push yourself a little bit further, and you know how far to push. Mm-hmm. If you have a bad instructor and give you such a huge weight that you put your back out or pull a muscle, right, and you can't go for another month, that's no use to the instructor, because they're not going to get paid. It's certainly no use to you. And you're going to have that experience and think, I'm not going back there because I got injured.
Right.
So in terms of psychological safety, it's knowing how far to push and knowing those people. And again, self-awareness. Who in the group is safe to be pushed? Are they beyond their limits? Are they suffering from problems at home that actually at this moment in time, I need to actually understand their welfare needs, rather than kind of telling them they need to do this work at a certain point in a certain time, understanding them at a deeper level. So again, like I said, I keep coming around to self-awareness. That's probably, there's a bias on my point because I've been through it and experienced it, and that's what I'm kind of passionate about now.
It's important, David. It's so big being self-aware, and I challenge all the leaders out there. If you're not following David, first go follow him on LinkedIn, David Howell. You can find him at Able, ABLEANDRUSH.com, ableandrush.com. He's got a book coming out, Speak Up, Listen Down. This is super exciting stuff, David. I could talk to you all night. I'm going to be respectful of your time. One question I love to ask my audience before we go, thinking of podcasting and technology, who knows the ripple effect, this podcast could create, or who all's going to see it. GLE and our network will see it, but it could be around for millennia for all we know. And great, great grandson of Phil Swanson might be hanging out with the great nephew of Uncle David, and being like, hey, let's watch our ancestors talk about stuff and what it was like back in the crazy times of the early 2000s. Yes. What would you want to leave future generations with that perspective in mind before we close today?
I would say remain human. And that's the important bit, is build those relationships and understand people around you and understand yourself, because it's a fantastic world out there, and we've all got something to offer. We just need to find it and direct it in the right way. And be happy, and don't get trapped in jobs that aren't making you happy as well. So many people, and this is where we go to the great resignation, I think, or great realizations, I call it, is people are realizing there's more to life than spending 2 hours driving to work and coming back and missing out on family and other relationships. So remain human. Yeah.
I love it, David. Everybody out there, great advice from David Howell. Remain human. Turn the lights on. Don't throw darts in the dark. Man, just some really, really, really great quotes. How do you know if you don't look? There's more to life than the commute every day necessarily. So make sure you're doing what you need to do to fill up your tank and remain human toward the other humans in your life. So then, go get. Yeah.
Then we keep that empathy and we keep that kindness and keep that compassion.
100%. Well, David, this has been fun, man. It's great getting to know you more. I'm sure we'll be chatting more along the way. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with the GLE network. This has been great.
Cheers, Phil.
Cheers. Y'all have a great rest of your day listening out there, and go lead everything.